Super. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Josh Trought. I'm the director up at DAcres Organic Farm in Dorchester, New Hampshire. It's between Plymouth and Hanover, so to speak, up I-93, up in the mountains. My talk today is not as academic as some of you might have heard so far. I really don't have that lecture-y type scale, and the PowerPoint, it makes it so sort of contrived to me. So I think I would prefer to be known as a farmer in the future as opposed to a lecturer or a spokesperson, but I do like to speak on occasions. That's why I'm here. The other aspect of that is that just the material that I'm getting into is not of the natural or the history era. It's of the now and the present. I know a lot of the speeches today are more about historical anecdotes and so forth, but this is the living history that I'm trying to relay. Inasmuch as that, I'll begin my history in 1971. That was the year I was born. And I think it's a pivotal time for the human race in terms of recognizing our place in the universe, recognizing our place on planet Earth. It's this beginning of Earth Day, in the beginning of the time where we first had photographs from space of this glorious planet. I think it was really a cultural awakening. And so I'm a child of that era. All my environmental education, history, and so forth was given to me by people who are very passionate about this topic. And it has influenced me to a very profound effect. That being said, in terms of our exploitation and destructive behavior on this earth, I am as complicit as everyone else in this room. When in my youth, we were the pioneers of suburbia in eastern North Carolina. We took farmland, rich agricultural land, and we decided to build housing and shopping malls, suburbia. During the time that I grew up in North Carolina, there was 7% growth, which means that's a 10-year doubling time. So after 10 years, there was twice as many convenience stores. And instead of a single-lane highway, there was a double-lane highway. Twice as many stoplights, twice as many everything. I was there in the time where, for us, we were the third or fourth house in the subdivision. When we ended up leaving North Carolina, there was 40 houses in the subdivision. I built the first treehouse in the neighborhood. I was there when cable came in. It's a tremendous period of growth in the state. And I got to witness also the destruction in the state, because the agricultural heritage that was there disappeared very rapidly. The subsistence farming culture of that era is rapidly being undermined by this growth. So I left North Carolina to try to save the world. I moved to University of Colorado to do my undergraduate work, and my degree was in environmental conservation. So I thought, with that knowledge, I would be able to save the planet. I think at the time, sort of my vision of that was become a park ranger. That's how you do it. During that period of undergraduate studies, it was a pretty depressing time for me. It was just that my studies were all about the things wrong with the world. There's overpopulation, resource depletion, climate chaos, just the destructive elements of our society. And there really wasn't a lot offered in the studies in terms of what are we going to do about this. And so that element was 4 years of just the same old multiple choice tests about just the problems. How many species have gone extinct since in the last 50 years. 1, 2, or 2,000, none of them are good. It wasn't any questions about, what can we do about this species extinction? And I also discovered during that time at the university that I had really been a child of privilege, and I hadn't really discovered much to do with my own hands or my own body. I had this academic knowledge, but when it came to providing shelter or food for myself, I I had no skills whatsoever. Just really lacked that understanding and those abilities. And for me, it was particularly profound because, my generation before, my grandfather had been a carpenter. And then for me to have grown up really with a gold spoon in my mouth. My father was a physician. My mother was a VP of hospital operations. So we had a lot of luxury, a lot of affluence. I took a lot of vacations. I went skiing in Colorado, that sort of stuff. And that sort of stuff started to eat at me. Just being just blessed in so many ways with that affluence, and yet unable to really provide for others or provide for myself, for that matter. Another factor of my upbringing that really was eating at me at that time is how I grew up. I had spent a lot of time in hospitals. My parents are in the medical business, so after school I'd be at the hospital. That was my summer job, was filing things. And my dad was a radiologist, so I saw a lot of people who were close to death. A lot of people undergoing chemo. It's really, it could have been a depressing existence in some ways. My parents are very clinical, they're very good at what they do, so like friends of the family and other people would gravitate towards us if there was an illness. And so I watched a lot of people die when I was young. And friends of my family. And I think what that imparted on me is a sense of urgency. I really feel strongly that we only have a certain amount of time here on this wonderful planet, and we really have to act and do to look for solutions when we feel these challenges upon us. So back to me in college. Geez, I'm in college. It's in the University of Colorado, super hip place. Like, this is where they make commercials about rock climbing and mountain biking, and everyone wears spandex and drives a Range Rover. And, there's this environmental awareness undercurrent. But by the same token, it's lip service. It's the type of environment where people, I'm against racism. I'm for helping people in poverty. I'm for changing the climate. I'm gonna get in my Range Rover and go up to my house up in the canyon and sit in my hot tub. Is it a severe disconnect? People are aware, but they're not necessarily doing anything about it. And so, pulling out of Colorado on graduation, my parents wanted me to go to graduation. I decided we should go camping. So that was sort of the end of that was my graduation. Get the heck out of Boulder and go camping. And after that, I really tried to work on my practical skills. I traveled around looking for construction and farm-based work so that I could pick up some skills and start to apply myself, learn to use a screwdriver and a saw, and, become more familiar with the food system. And so I traveled around a little bit, and that's when I picked up this term, permaculture. Permaculture is a term that's been popularized recently. In the 1990s, when I learned about it, it was fairly new, nascent on this continent. The term was coined by two Australians in the 70s, and it is two words sort of thrown together. Permanent agriculture was the beginning, and then permanent culture. And so what that means to me is not necessarily we're going to have a culture that's static, that's evolved to its highest point and is permanent in one sense. The permanence to me means we are continually and perpetually evolving to reach our goals of sustainability and perpetuation. So it's not a static culture that we're looking to get to, of Valhalla and Eden, but rather the journey, continuing on the journey towards this perfection on earth that I think we would all aspire to. And so the basis of permaculture is based on principles and ethics. The principles are more along the lines of commonsensical. One principle would be store and retain energy. So in that sense, it's like the using of renewable energy systems like photovoltaics and batteries. So that's a basic principle of permaculture, for instance. The other side of permaculture is the ethical part of this study, this design science. And the ethics are fair share, people care, and earth care. And so those are the three binding ethics that are put in permaculture in its place in society as a design science. It's a science of perpetuation for our culture. What I would like to see is if all sciences, your engineers, your architects, they had those basic ethics as well. So they couldn't design something that would damage the earth. They wouldn't design something that would damage other people. And if we could live by those ethics, I think that would take us a long ways towards permanence in our culture. The permaculture skills provided a tool and a direction for me. Besides being now able to use my hands and my body to grow food and build shelter, I had a design science to help guide. And the design science is vague enough that it can fit into applications for like a homestead, or a school, or a hospital, or a municipality. You can use the design and morph it as you so choose for the applications of any scale, from large to small. For me, during that period of travel, I was really fortunate to see a lot of places. I went to North Carolina, I went to Montana, I went to Colorado, I went to the Virgin Islands, I went to the San Juan Islands off Washington State, and the islands were really super to build my knowledge because they provided an example of a people on an island that had become aware of their capacity. Because when you live on an island, you have to be more conscious of what comes in and goes out. Your waste systems, your energy systems become way more important. And it's more, to me, similar to the mentality that we need to have on planet Earth. Because as we're traveling through the universe, this island, this planet we're on, there are limits to growth. There are limits to the resource depletion and consumption. And when I ended up in Alaska, I was working on a house. It was a really modern, innovative house for energy conservation. It was like a net zero house before they had net zero houses. And I was on the banks of in Douglas, across from Juneau, and I got a phone call that changed my life. It was from my parents, and they informed me that my aunt in Dorchester, who was 89 years old, had just lost her driver's license. She's getting older. 89, she lost her husband about 10 years prior. She's trying to live, in this old cave on the side of a hill by herself, living out her life. And she wasn't going to be able to do it alone. She just lost her driver's license, so it really limited her mobility. She wasn't able to go to the grocery store, to the hairdresser, that sort of thing. There was talk of having to put her in a home, into a facility. And so given, our goals as a family to prevent that, to allow her to live through her life at home, and in the comfort of her home, my parents provided me with an opportunity to move to New Hampshire and financially support the creation of a farm enterprise. And it was a wonderful, it worked really well for the family because, we're saving financially, to put someone in an institution, thousands of dollars per year. So we're going to save economically, but we're going to provide my aunt with superior end-of-life care. She lived till she was 95, and she really became a second mother to me. She called, I remember one time she had gotten, one of those I fallen and I can't get up beepers. And so we're hosting a potluck across the street. I get the fallen I can't get up thing. So I run across the street, just left the party, didn't tell anyone. I go over there and she's on the ground, she's fallen, she's really hurt, she's struggling. And so I lay with her on the floor there for a while and talk about, just trying to encourage her. And she says, you're the son I never had. That's just wow. And so, I get her into bed, and she goes to sleep. And I ended up sleeping on the floor in her house that morning. And she woke me up the next day, getting up for getting coffee. And she looks at me and says, oh, my hip. What the heck happened last night? So she didn't even remember telling me that. sort of the thing. But Edith was great. She was a wonderful lady. She had moved to Dorchester in the 1940s. Let me tell you a little bit before the history before she arrived there. The land that we settled on was settled in the 1800s by the Elliott family. They came to Dorchester and more or less were given the property. It's the charter that happens and so forth. You show up and it was, originally the deed to Dorchester was granted by the King of England, for heaven's sakes. It was before the American Revolution, and so the King of England had given the property to the Elliots, more or less, to the town of Dorchester, and then this whole grant business. So the settlers had come into Dorchester and done, the history of New Hampshire. They'd come in and they cut down all the trees and built the stone walls and tried to raise up sheep like they had. They were familiar with the economy of the British Isles, yeah? And the thing about it is they flunked. They failed for many reasons. There's all sorts of historical issues that were going on at the time, the Civil War, the Industrial Revolution, the Western expansion. The population of Dorchester had grown tremendously from the original settlers in the 1700s to around 1850. The population peaked at 1,200 people. So from 0 to 1,200, 70 years, something like that. We all know that it sort of crashed after that. They cut down all the forest. There was no forest left, no resource left, and the soil was not up to the snuff, and the winters were so hard. So the population declined dramatically. When my aunt and uncle moved up in the 1940s, they were looking to get back to the land. These eras, these generational movements of back to the land have happened on successive times since the 1800s. And my aunt and uncle were part of that generation. They read a book called 5 Acres and Independence, M.C. Cain's, very popular book at that era. And they said, let's get the heck out of Hartford. They were living in Hartford, Connecticut. And there was pollution and crime and no ability to be self-sufficient on their own. So they up and left Hartford and moved to Dorchester. When they got to Dorchester, there was only 90 people. So going from 1,200 to 90 in a couple generations, it's a population collapse of biblical magnitude. My aunt, when she moved to Dorchester, for the first couple of years, she mostly cried. It was just lonely and backwards and tough living. So for me, coming into that history, my aunt and uncle had been homesteaders. They'd been really close to the land. My aunt had done a lot of decorative artwork. She'd been in the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen and Craftspeople, and done all kinds of classes and different types of art through the years. And that was more or less her bread and butter. My uncle was a woodworker and blacksmith. but always had to have sort of a straight job to maintain the farm. So when we came into it, 1997, we had the goals of being more than just a farm. We wanted to be a community outreach center that meets the needs of the people living on the farm, as well as tries to localize the economy in general. So the work that we do in Dorchester, there's the internal aspect and the external aspect. On the internal aspect, we're trying to be as sustainable as possible. We're trying to grow as much of our own food as we can, provide for our shelter, provide for our energy needs, really model that, demonstrate that, become an exemplar of that kind of living. On the outside, we are inviting people in to see that process, but we're also trying to make a connection. So we're doing a lot of food events, because we figure if we get it in their mouths, that's going to make them happy and really get it, to eat the food that comes to the land. The high nutrition, the freshness is how I think we can really convince people through their taste buds. And also getting them together to share the food in a face-to-face environment, so they're not talking to people through screens. So pretty much every weekend, 3 times a month, there's community events. Breakfast, first Sunday breakfast, tonight's pizza night, second Friday pizza, last Friday potluck open mic. And that sort of forms the basis of our community outreach. But we also offer classes, how to inoculate mushrooms, different workshops for kids and adults about sustainability. All those factors bring people in and out of the farm as if it was a community center. To do all this requires making upwards over $100,000 a year. And somehow we do it. It's amazing. It's a hill farm up in the woods, and it is rocky, and our farming practices are very they're not conventional. They're very rudimentary. We're doing no-till agriculture, and we're using pigs to actually do the tilling before we bring in our crops. So it's a slow process. It's a process that's taken years to evolve to really get fertile land that we can grow enough vegetables and build our subsistence capacity. So we would never be a profitable market farm. We just don't have the methodology at this time to compete with people who are tractor farming. So how do we make $100,000, $150,000 a year? It's really the value adding is the words I will use. Because with potato, like a potato, I go to the market, down in Boston Market, wholesale price is about 5 cents a pound. Like, you can't even get me to go harvest the potatoes for 5 cents a pound, let alone plant them, keep the potato bugs off them. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes into it. 5 cents a pound, it's insulting. So the way we can make money is to, instead of dealing with a middleman, we go directly to the consumer, to the person eating. We'll put it on their plate. We do overnight accommodations, as well as open up for restaurant-type service. And so that 5 cent, for a pound of potatoes, I can get 3 servings out of that pound easy. $10, $20 a plate, I'm looking at $60 a pound for potatoes. So that's the real economic driver there, is value adding. Looking at our resources, be it potatoes, be it the trails through the woods, be it the fact that we have horses and pigs on site, or these educational type amenities. That's what we're bringing people into Dorchester. We're bringing them into DAcres to recognize. It is a community center school, but it's also a business. People out there in the general public are looking for these commodities. They're looking for peace and quiet. They're looking for farm fresh food. They're looking for this education. So we have a valuable commodity. And so we're redemption. We're redeeming that coupon and selling that good to make our local economy viable. And once again, it's really the basis of this is recognizing the value of our natural resources and recognizing the value and the recognition that our needs are fundamental. Okay? So when I talk about human needs, we really need to be meeting them. And what would they be? In my mind, the human needs can be categorized in a fairly small several small categories. Well, that's the wrong word. There's categories that are limited. We'll say food and water. Everybody needs that. Shelter. Everybody needs that. What else do we need? Fiber for clothes. We can't all run around naked, particularly in New Hampshire. So that's the three physical things that we need. We're also going to need community. Okay? We're going to need each other. We're going to need each other to educate and acculturate each other. What else is it that people need? Okay, so there's a limited thing. It's not necessarily, not everybody needs an iPhone. Think about this. In your memory, were people happier 20 years ago, or are they happier now that they have an iPhone? Right? Is it really is? And the iPhone, the thing is, it's a piece of technology, but what does it give you? It gives you access to information and your friends and family. And that's ultimately what I think we're trying to get at, is get at these happiness. What makes us happy, what makes us thrive in our lives. And it's not these consumerist products. It's our basic essentials that we can derive from the land if we're given the opportunity. So that's what DAcres is all about. Is it about experimenting in that realm? Let's take it a step back. Let's provide for our basic needs, and let's protect the commons. Let's protect the air. Let's protect the water. Let's protect the soil. And folks, everything's going to be all right. If we destroy our resources and we don't tend to our basic needs, our society is going to collapse like the society in Dorchester. It went from 1,200 to 90. At some levels, we're putting the cart before the horse in how we're addressing what we need in our lives. I think, in terms of happiness and finding our place and perpetuate as a culture, we need to wake up in the morning and be happy for what we got and be looking to share what we got instead of take more. So that's my basic message from my experience. I definitely messed up a little bit and skipped my little story about extinction and so forth. I was hoping to invite you guys to talk about that. But when I was growing up, I fished for crabs a lot. And, just go down to the river and you could pull up crabs like crazy. Just put a chicken bone on a string, pull them up. And by the time I was a teenager, there were no more crabs. And so, like in my life, I've seen, extinction. And they talk about polar bears going extinct, and it's tragic. But at some level, folks, we need to think about society and people going extinct. In the ecological scheme of things, there is a carrying capacity. And when you've reached your carrying capacity and you destroy your resources and you pollute your environment, there's nothing left. This is hard science. And so we really need to take a step back as a society, once again, and look at our basic needs and protection of the commons so that we continue to thrive as a species for thousands of generations into the future. Forget about worrying about next year. Let's worry about the next 100 years. I guess at this juncture, I'd be more than happy to take questions. Or
is there some question that you'd want to ask us that like, after learning a little bit about your own personal history and about the farming and the community building that you do, is there something that you would think that, what would you ask us to think about? What do you wish that we would come away from the program?
Well, some of the benefit that I have of not being an academic, in some senses, I can really, I have a harder edge to a degree.
You know what?
A harder edge. So I would throw at you the question, and sort of phrase this in a way. My parents taught me, so much of this, and have been with me throughout this journey, and have watched me sort of rattle cages and sort of trying to push our society to evolve in this manner. And my mother, she's 72 years old, and she has told me matter-of-factly that she is not going to beat technology. She's not going to change. She's not looking to make these changes. And it comes down to me. I'm very I love my mother. I love her very much. But why, Mom? Why aren't you willing to take these steps? If you know that this trip downtown to just get a cup of coffee is the wrong thing, why are you still doing it? So for me to get out into the public and talk about this, people, for some reason, want to think that I'm living up in Dorchester like some sort of monk, like some sort of saint that's like deprived. Like, how can you live like that without all this stuff? And it's like, my life is more beautiful and simple because I've left this stuff behind. I had a cell phone in the 90s. Well, I don't know where it is now. It's gone, but I never got another one. I don't have an I thing. I just, and to me, I feel such joy. And I would like to share that with others. I would like to share this opportunity to sort of break this consumerist cycle. And so, for me, the question is, like, what steps could I make? Could I do to help you make steps? Like, is it your, from as if you were my mother? Is it your reluctance to garden? Is it your reluctance to turn the thermostat down to 65? Is it, what's the, how can I empower? How can I provide knowledge or experience that will help us all make a transition, to make us all part of an evolution in a positive direction? So that, when we look back 20 years, our society is happier. Our society is more sustainable. We have made progress as a people. So how do we get there? And it's going to be a lot of give and take. There's going to be different levels of this, but we need to get the conversation started. So, Any more thoughts?
Where'd you grow up, North Carolina?
A town called Greenville. Well, actually, Winterville, Pitt County, Armpit County.
So where is that? Is that near Asheville?
It's in the eastern part of the state. It's in the agricultural flatlands. The whole eastern side is beautifully, it's so much agricultural potential. It's amazing. It's all the minerals and everything that run off the Appalachian and then hit the foothills and then settle before that goes out to the ocean. It's sort of the intertidal.
How's the community of Dorchester, Hebron, and Orange responding to your effort?
It's give and take. Initially, there was definitely a lot of resistance. We ran into a lot of hurdles with zoning, and we got into lawsuits. We entered into proceedings with the court. That's all been resolved, through the years with the expanded definition of agriculture in the state of New Hampshire. That was very helpful. But it's also about becoming an insider, becoming part of the community instead of exclusive or inclusive type place. We have a very transparent operation. Visitors are always welcome. Definitely encouraged to come to the farm for whatever reason, for the public events or for whenever. And then I've taken a very public position. I'm the moderator in the town of Dorchester, so I talk to everybody who votes. They come in to vote, they got to go by me, and I'm the leader of the town meetings. So and in that role, I am trying my bestest to remain neutral, to remain an element in the town of Dorchester of moderation and facilitation. And so that's what DAcres is known as now, a common ground. So we've come from being outsiders, or people are skeptical, to being a very influential part of the town in a somewhat neutral way, so that we're not picked out as having a really lefty position or something like that. So the idea is to become a part and to really get into the fabric of your community. It's not exclusive. It's not that kind of place. The goal is to level the field and get us all in the room and have that discussion instead of different people talking on different ends of town. And Dorchester's a place too. When I first moved there, that people knew each other by what car they drove. Oh, you're the one that's got the yellow Subaru that goes by. They didn't even know each other's names. So getting it back to the point where new people are welcomed, get to know you, get to know your name, and I think a lot of these older New Hampshire towns have the old and new dichotomy that can be pretty hard. So trying to break that up and trying to free us of that traditional bickering.
Tell us just a little more about Dorchester. Is there a school in Dorchester?
There's no stoplight in Dorchester.
Okay.
There's not
No
much.
kids? Are there any kids?
There are young people. Definitely.
School age kids that.
Yep.
So where do they go?
Go to Canaan Elementary. So that's a great part of what we do too. Is some of the community outreach programs. We're in the schools. We solicit for funds. We get grant funds, and then we find liaisons to go in and help with the STEM programming. Particularly in Canaan this year, we developed a school garden. So it was a great step. In the fall, we're looking to develop the composting program in Canaan Elementary. And then our last is, when we get into the school, we go for the food system with the garden, and then we go for composting to sort of further understand that whole cycle. And then we go for recycling, because we feel like those three components, we have expertise and we can really address it at the school level. So send in somebody to help support the school and get those programs up and running. Other community outreach programs that we're famous for are the Local Foods Plymouth program, which received national acclaim as the first online farmers market. And it's in its 10th year now. And what you do is all the farmers put in their products on Monday, and they're all listed online. What this farm has steak, this farm has eggs, and then the buyers go into the computer system and they can buy eggs from this farm and steak from that farm and milk from here, and we deliver it all to the same place on Thursday at the farmers market, and they just come pick up a bag and take it. They pay online, and so they can get produce from many different localities in one place. And it's all delivered, it's all paid for. The farmer knows what to bring to market.
It doesn't have to bring everything and take it all back if it doesn't sell.
So we developed the Local Foods Plymouth program and then the Local Goods Guide. The Local Goods Guide is just more or less a listing of all local products and availability, where to come by. And so that, we print about 7,500 copies of that on a yearly basis, and it evolves it yearly. And so that goes out in Grafton County. It's pretty much the resource for local food.
So Josh, how does an organization like New Hampshire Humanities, who one of our goals is to to build communities and encourage civic engagement? You're talking about civic engagement, but you're using different just different words. You're using community outreach and that sort of thing. In what ways could New Hampshire Humanities give something to communities in that nook of New Hampshire? Any thoughts on that?
What do we need from you?
What could you use? A lot of our roots are in academic humanities, history, literature, philosophy, and having been lucky enough to be steeped in that, we feel a joy in sharing it. But is there any way for that to be shared in communities like Dorchester or Cayman or Orange, or is the gulf so wide that there needs to be something completely different?
Well, the first thought that came to my head is just how it's promoted, how it's recognized. I mean, ultimately, we need to be making the farm and the humanities and the history more attractive to people in different ways, I think. And, the word that comes to mind is sexy. Like, how do we...
It's us.
Well, no, you are. The history of our country should be put on, a pedestal. All the offerings that you do offer. I think it generally comes across as a little bland and a little tired. If there's a way to make it more relevant and attractive to our young people, maybe tie it to our roots or our connection, or try to find the heartstrings that get people out to these. Because you have a wonderful cadre and very informative programs, but like what's really pulling people to get to it? We have one we're hosting, and I'm not sure it's humanities or UNH co-op. We're hosting one tomorrow night, and it's with Dr. Rob Robertson. And it's got a terrible name. It's like implementing natural resource. We've been struggling. We're trying to get people to come to it. It's going to be hosted at the library. It's in a central location. It's just, how do we get people out to this? It's going to be very informative. I think everybody can walk away with some great knowledge on this. But it sounds like it's going to put them to sleep. And so how do we get to that next level where this stuff has some teeth?
What's the connection?
It has some teeth and bites. This is important. Our history is important. This is how we build the future. How do we get that message across? I think that's where I would dig deep, is in your marketing. Myself, I think you have the materials. I think we just need to get it to the people, and it's such freely available. I think we just need to make it more attractive. And I'll just say attractive instead of sexy.
I live in Nottingham. We had some people come from the wildlife rehabilitation program in Maine, and they brought birds of prey with them, and the kids were fascinated with the birds, and they imparted lots and lots of very informational stuff about raptors and things like that. But I think the draw was live birds, And there were lots of kids in the audience, and they just ate that stuff right up.
That's how we're dragging them in to see the piggies. Come see the piggies, come see the horse, or the food. Come taste this food. And then people will talk about that. They'll talk about, that was the best pizza I ever had. That was the best pancakes I ever had. Those eggs were the best eggs I ever had. If you get people saying, that discussion the other night was one of the best discussions I've ever heard. If you can get that momentum going, I think you'll do well. Because once again, you have the resource.
Well, it's interesting. Our largest audiences for Humanities to Go are often in the smallest communities in the state, because
there's nothing else to do sometimes.
Right, no, seriously, you're not competing with too many other cultural events. But at the same time, I feel like there is a gulf between what we offer and how we offer it, and what people in, particularly the Lakes Region North part of the state, what they really find relevant.
Yeah. Well, the libraries and the town halls are nice, for location, but I guess I would also consider doing it in people's homes or places of business, like in a restaurant or something, or, because people are convening in different places in the North Country than necessarily, always the library, so to speak. So I guess I would also investigate other venues. There's a possibility that might create that further connection and that comfort or that just the effectiveness of the programming might be heightened.
I have to call time on you, I'm so sorry.
It's part of the rules.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, I just needed
Do you go to the Canaan Community Market on Saturday, Sunday,
You know,
You have the booth there?
no, we don't go to very many farmers markets anymore. We try to get them to us.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time sitting in the hot sun watching the lettuce wilt.
Yeah.
It's just like harvesting so much, get up so early, and you sell half of it. That's good, but the other half goes home. You feed the piggies with it. It's the way to go.
Yeah.
So when I harvest it, I want it to go into somebody's mouth.
How many acres?
Oh, the farm, 200 acres more or less, but we cultivate less than 5. Most of it's forest, and we like to preserve our wildlands as much as
In
possible.
its earlier days, was it a dairy farm? Or
No, more or less just a hillside sheep farm.
Yeah.
Any maple sugar?
Oh yeah,
Are
we
you
like
right
to
off
tap
the-
trees for sure.
You're right off the route between Canaan and
118.
118.
Yep, it's right there on the corridor.
So you-
It's about a mile off 118.
Yeah.
DAcres.org, that's it.
Do you happen to know Josh Arnold?
Oh yeah, I know Alan.
Sounds like you guys have a lot in common.
Yeah, no, we've worked together quite a bit. He's coming this weekend to teach part of the permaculture design course with. I don't think Molly's coming this weekend, but he's teaching this weekend. We worked extensively with Gala.
Now, was in a group, and this guy, Josh Arnold, was over in Ossipee.
He would be a great speaker as well, and also, his location with the Grange, the former Grange Hall, is a great location for speakers. So, Josh is.
It sounds like you guys do very similar.
Yeah, we started about the same time. Maybe they got started a couple years after us, but that's very similar projects.
Well, you said the ethics of permaculture is fair share, earth care, and what was the third one?
People care.
You spent a lot of time reading Wendell Berry.
I have.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
That's well worth it.
Yeah. I read a lot of Scott Nearing now. Scott Nearing?
Yeah.
And Scott Nearing. I'm friends with his granddaughter, and she's given me a lot of these old journals for social science that were put out.
Yeah.
It's
Pretty neat.
it's really interesting to be reading books from the 1940s and 1950s that are so relevant today.
Well, you know what, they'll be 100 years old.
Yep. Well, I'm definitely available if anyone has further questions or anything they'd like to endure here.
My son was in Orange. Scott
Yeah, Scott, I know he plays music all the time. He gets the spotlight.
My boy.
Yeah, no, he's great.
My mountain man.
Yeah, and he's a great surveyor too. He's done so much work for the town.
Yeah.
Oh no, Scott's a great guy.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll tell him I met you.
Yeah.
That'd be great. For
Yeah.
sure.
Like to do it.
That's worth the trip right there.
Yeah. I also like your phrase about a place in place-based economy.
Place-based diet is also a good one. Place-based diet. Seasonal place-based diet.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Right.
it's really good.
Good.
It makes you relish the dandelion greens
Well, I
when
might pop
first thing
in
in the
and see
spring.
it sometime.